Good evening, welcome to ITV News. This is Monday night's calendar.
And these are tonight's main stories.
Tainted blood scandal. After decades of campaigning, a public inquiry begins into what's been called the worst disaster in NHS history.
I'm not bothered about compensation or cash or anything like that. I don't care about that. I want someone to be held accountable for what happened, for the reasons why my dad died.
First tonight to what's been described as the worst disaster in the history of the NHS, and the chance victims could finally get answers as to why it happened.
Thousands of British patients contracted HIV or hepatitis C after they were given contaminated blood products from America during the 1970s and 80s. Many of these came from prisoners or drug addicts who were actually paid to donate.
Well, today, after decades of campaigning, the public inquiry into the contaminated or so-called tainted blood scandal finally got underway. Kevin Ashford was there for us.
Well, many of those who travelled here for the inquiry, which began in the building behind me, it was a day they thought would never come. They've been battling for decades trying to get answers as to why during the 1970s and 1980s thousands of people were given infected blood that contained viruses such as hepatitis and HIV. It was an episode that led to the deaths of more than 2,400 people. Lisa Adlam reports.
From her home in Leeds, Sarah Dorricott is keeping a close eye on the inquiry into the contaminated blood scandal. Her father Mike died 3 years ago, aged just 47. A haemophiliac, he contracted hepatitis C after being given infected blood as a teenager. Left with only memories now, Sarah hopes the inquiry will achieve one thing.
Accountability. I'm not bothered about compensation or cash or anything like that. I don't care about that. I want someone to be held accountable for what happened, for the reasons why my dad died, and so that we can learn from this.
The inquiry in London began by remembering those who, like Sarah's father, died as a result of being given contaminated blood, approaching 3,000 people, and by hearing from many more whose lives have been changed by it forever.
I just feel like every day I wake up with a death sentence hanging over my head.
Led by Sir Brian Langstaff, the inquiry will examine how in the 1970s and 80s blood products contaminated with a range of viruses and taken from high-risk donors such as prostitutes and prisoners were given to patients across the UK. Victims, families and survivors have long campaigned for this moment, among them Glenn Wilkinson from Hull.
It's truth and justice, that's what we've said from the beginning. We desperately need that, we deserve it I think after what's happened to us. We're talking about thousands of UK citizens that have died. We feel like we've stood on the cusp of what is going to be a defining moment for this campaign.
I'm here to listen.
A defining moment that's taken decades to arrive. The government has vowed the inquiry will deliver the answers families like Sarah Dorricott's have been waiting for.
What colour is this?
And while her pain that her dad never got to meet his grandson remains raw, she does at least have hope that future generations will never suffer the same fate.
Lisa Adlam reporting. So what happens now, Kevin?
Well, these are very much the preliminary stages of the inquiry. It's an inquiry that could last up to 2.5 years. It's going to be one of the biggest of its kind in this country's history. In his opening remarks, the chairman, Sir Brian Langstaff, said he would be putting people at the very heart of the proceedings. He would investigate any suggestion of a cover-up and, where necessary, be holding people to account. He also said that there may still be thousands of people across the country unaware that they were infected by the treatment they received in the 1970s and 1980s. So what is already a huge inquiry may yet still grow in scale.
Kevin in London, thank you.